Main lecture. B. 3. Elastic V.S Inelastic. An elasticity of 1 is the established borderline between elastic and inelastic goods. A curve with an elasticity of 1 is called unit elastic. An elasticity of 1 indicates perfect responsiveness of quantity to price, that is, in a unit elastic supply curve. A 10% increase in price yields a 10% increase in quantity. A unit elastic demand curve will have a decrease in quantity of 10% with a price decrease of 10%. If the elasticity of demand is greater than or equal to 1, meaning that the percent change in quantity is greater than the percent change in price, then the curve will be relatively flat and elastic. Small price changes will have large effects on demand. If the elasticity of the demand curve is less than 1, meaning the percent change in quantity is less than the percent change in price, then the curve will be steep and inelastic. It will take a big change in price to affect demand. Similarly, if the elasticity of supply is greater than or equal to 1, the curve will be elastic, relatively flat, with quantities supplied very responsive to changes in price. If the elasticity of the supply curve is less than 1, it will be inelastic. The curve will be flatter and quantities supplied will be less responsive to changes in price. Remember that elasticity is an absolute value. It doesn't and #39 T indicate an increase in quantity with an increase in price when you are dealing with downward sloping curves. Except for curves with an elasticity of 1, elasticity on straight line curves is not constant. Why is this? As you move along the curve, the slope stays constant, so that each movement yields the same amount of increase or decrease. But as a curve shifts out, these increases or decreases make up a different percentage of the base amount, and the resulting percentage changes are therefore different at different points on the curve. Thus, unless elasticity is specifically stated to be constant on a curve, it usually changes from point to point, and so we usually only study the elasticity of demand or supply at a specific point, usually at the equilibrium point. Note, one solution to studying elasticity over a curve, rather than at a specific point, is to calculate elasticity using the following formula. Elasticity equals change in quantity / average quantity / change in price / average price. Elasticity equals Q1 to Q2 / Q1 plus Q2 / 2 / P1 P2 / P1 plus P2 / 2. This formula will give you an approximation of the elasticity over a range. Instead of a point-specific elasticity, but as the range gets larger, the result becomes less and less accurate, which is why many economists prefer to use the traditional measure of elasticity. It is a little difficult to visualize why elasticity is not constant on a straight line graph without looking at a diagram. In the slope of this hypothetical straight line supply curve is constant, slope equals 2, but the elasticity changes as you move along the graph. Let in #39 s assume that the price of this good is initially $3 and then increases to $5. In this case, the elasticity for the good can be calculated as follows. Elasticity equals percent change in quantity / percent change in price. Elasticity equals 2 to 1 / 1 / 5 to 3 / 3 equals 3/2. If the price increases from $5 to $7, however, the elasticity is calculated as follows. Elasticity equals percent change in quantity / percent change in price. Elasticity equals 3 to 2 / 2 / 7 to 5 / 5 equals 5/4. The lesson? Be careful when dealing with elasticity. Don and #39 T assume that Elasticity will be constant, just because you and hashtag 39 read dealing with a straight line. 4. The effects of elasticity on equilibrium price and quantity. As we already know, equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity in a given market are determined by the intersection of the supply and demand curves. Depending on the elasticities of supply and demand, the equilibrium price and quantity can behave differently with shifts in supply and demand. We can see one example of how this works if we imagine a supply curve shifting in and out along a single demand curve. If demand is very elastic, then shifts in the supply curve will result in large changes in quantity demanded and small changes in price at the equilibrium point. If demand is very inelastic, however, then shifts in the supply curve will result in large changes in price and small changes in quantity at the equilibrium point. Question-answer session. Q1. Why would demand for oxygen be more inelastic than demand for caviar, assuming that you have to buy both goods in order to have them? ANS. Goods for which demand is inelastic tend to be essential goods or goods without good substitutes. While some might argue that there is no good substitute for caviar, and it is necessary for a good lifestyle, it is still not as essential as oxygen. If there were a market for oxygen and a market for caviar, and buyers have a limited amount of money, they would always choose to buy oxygen, no matter what the price, or else they would die, rendering all markets useless anyway. Caviar, being a non-essential good, would be a lower priority than oxygen, and so demand for it would be more affected by changes in price. This means that demand for oxygen will be inelastic relative to demand for caviar. Q2. From each pair of goods, pick the good for which demand will most likely be more elastic. Coffee and water. Rice and ham. Underwear and tuxedos. Velvet and cotton. Coffee makers and espresso machines. ANS. The goods for which demand will be more elastic: coffee, ham, tuxedos. Velvet, espresso machines. Q3. How is it possible for the elasticity of demand to change over time, in the long run? ANS. In the short run, demand can often be inelastic, as people are not willing to immediately change their consumption habits with increases in price. If they see that prices are permanently higher, however, they may take steps to change their consumption patterns in order to save money. For instance, if John buys a cup of gourmet coffee every morning at the same coffee shop, and the prices go up, he may continue buying coffee there, making his demand is inelastic. He still buys coffee at the same rate even at a higher price. After a few weeks, however, he notices that it and hashtag 39 is starting to cost him a lot more to buy coffee every morning. So he might go buy a coffee maker and make his coffee every morning. In the long run, his elasticity of demand is quite high, even though his demand was inelastic in the short run.